Daughters: evil stepmother and spineless father. My ex-husband, X, and I separated in February of 2008 after 7 years of marriage. By the time our divorce was finalized, he was already dating S, 12 years his junior. Our daughter, Eve, not real name, was 3 years old at the time. We shared 50/50 custody. X and I had a good relationship during the divorce until S entered the picture and, in her 20-years-old girl wisdom, decided that I was the enemy. After that, X was no longer allowed to be friendly with me. This pattern continues to this day. Growing up, Eve was a difficult, headstrong child, to put it mildly, but not a bad kid. Over the years, I facilitated therapy for Eve and attempted to get X and S involved. S refused to attend, which meant that X was not allowed to attend. I continued getting Eve all the help I could and doing 100% of the work to make it happen. X was not allowed to help or take Eve to appointments. X and S got married around the time Eve was 5 years old. Without Eve in attendance. Around the time they got married, S developed a sensitivity to smells. I do recognize that this is a real thing for some people. However, S began to weaponize this to torture Eve. I, very quickly, began using unscented laundry detergent on all clothes bedding in our house, even mine. We used only S-approved shampoo and soap, all to no avail. S would always tell Eve that you smell like your mom's house. S would force Eve to strip out of her clothes from mom's house in their garage and put them in a trash bag before going upstairs to wash her body and hair, sometimes 5 or 6 times, until S decided that she didn't smell anymore. Yes. She smelled her hair after every wash and either approved her smell or sent her back to the shower to wash it again. X did absolutely nothing to stop this behavior or stand up to S. This treatment continued for years. Eve was also never allowed to bring her backpack, schoolwork, or musical instrument into their house, because it all smelled like your mom's. She had to have a separate backpack for their house and, if she didn't have a second set of homework, she wasn't allowed to bring it into their home. This made it nearly impossible for her to be a good student. Around the time Eve was 8, I hired the best custody lawyer in my state to try to get sole custody to try to get Eve away from her stepmother. I was told I didn't have a case, due to the fact that what was being done to Eve couldn't be considered abusive enough to warrant a change to our order. I continued therapy for Eve. Over time, X and S had 3 children. Eve absolutely adores her siblings. I met my wonderful husband when Eve was 5 and we got married in 2017, when she was 12. Our immediate family was in attendance, including hubby's 2 children and Eve as our wedding party. My husband truly treats Eve like she's one of his own. When COVID happened in 2020, S decided that it was too dangerous for Eve to go back and forth between our houses because of her young kids. Eve stayed exclusively with me and my husband for a couple years, with the exception of some school breaks when she was allowed to go to her dad's house, only after she'd missed school to isolate and then tested negative for COVID. This situation went on significantly longer than mandated. And, still, the torture continued. S refused to ride in a car with Eve unless she had gone through the anti-smelling ritual. So, X always had to pick her up alone and immediately go back to his house for her to wash. When Eve started to drive, she was never once allowed to drive over to their house to spend time with her family because she would always show up smelling like her mom's house or mom's car. Eve was never allowed to bring gifts to her siblings if the gifts had ever been at my house. When COVID started winding down, Eve was a sophomore in high school. She had turned into an excellent student with her newfound stability in our home. She was working hard in school and starting to think about applying to college. At that point, going back to my ex's would have been a major hardship for her. My husband said, "We can't let Eve go back to that house." After a very brief discussion with X, and assurances that he didn't have to pay me an extra dime in child support, he agreed to let her stay with us full time. I can honestly say that COVID was the best thing that ever happened to Eve. With a combination of therapy, medication and stability, she grew up to be a brilliant, kind and confident young woman. She truly is one of the most wonderful people I know. The last time she set foot inside her father's house was over a year ago. And she's probably only been there twice in the past 2 years. She was old enough to decide for herself, and I think she'd finally just had enough. X has told Eve for years that he would not be able to afford to help her pay for college. At all. Hard stop. At this time, I should tell you now about SS school work history. She has a bachelor's degree but hasn't worked in over 10 years. It is my understanding that X has been paying on her enormous undergraduate student loan balance the entire time they've been married. And, around the time Eve was applying to college, S decided that she really wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree. She conveniently got it all set up to start her program at the exact same time my daughter was starting her first year of college. But, of course, there was no money to help Eve. Eve is now 19 years old and in her freshman year at an excellent state university a few hours away, where she received a really significant scholarship for leadership. She is studying in a STEM major. She is truly thriving. My husband and I are not wealthy, but are paying for almost all of her remaining college expenses. We purchased everything she needed for college and also moved her in. Eve is so responsible, focused and driven, we decided we had to do everything possible to make sure she could get the education she so desperately wanted. She absolutely deserves it. X didn't contribute any of his time, money, or support throughout the entire process. This past August, before Eve left for school, she wanted to see her dad and siblings but didn't want to see her stepmother. They met up at a coffee shop for a couple hours. X told S about it and how she was not invited. Now, S won't allow Eve to see her dad or siblings at all. And X won't do anything about it. So, this year, Eve had her first Christmas without seeing her dad and siblings in probably 10 years. She didn't get to see them at all over her holiday break. She is devastated. I feel that this is the only way S can think of to hurt Eve, since she doesn't have physical access to her anymore. She is just trying to continue Eve's torture any way she possibly can. It is incomprehensible to me that S could cut off such a wonderful, loving person. That she could hurt a person who has literally never hurt anyone in her life. And it enrages me that X has allowed the abuse to persist over so many years. He has failed as a father and protector. So, please, those of you with children, decide that your child is the most important person in your life. If your girlfriend-boyfriend acts like they don't like your child, believe it. And understand that it almost never gets better over time. Stand up for your child. Defend your child from anyone who tries to hurt them. Hold out for a partner who will truly love and support your child, like I did. I had many opportunities to hitch my wagon to someone who wouldn't have been a great step-parent for Eve, but I didn't. She is too important to me. I am so grateful that Eve has me and my husband in her life, two people that she knows she can really count on. People who support her and want the best for her. People who lift her up and make her life better. The way real parents are supposed to. I'm not sure what I'm expecting anyone to say. I just needed to get this off my chest. It's been incredibly difficult over the years to have almost no control over my daughter's abuse. And it's killing me now to know how much she's hurting and that there's still nothing I can do to fix it for her. I will just continue to support her and love her fiercely, the way I always have.
Confession 2. I think my fiancé has been having an affair with my best mate. I'm a 29 male. My ex-fiancée, female 25, has said she was done with us, so I moved into my mate's Tom's house a week ago 300 kilometers away, and the day after I left has had my best mate Dylan over every night and switched the cameras off to sneak him in, then turned them back on. I found out when I went back last Wednesday to pick up some more stuff. I went for a walk to see a couple mates before I went back to Townsville to Tom's house, and my other mate Matthew, who I went to see before I left, asked me if I sold my car. I told him I had moved to Townsville. I'm a security guard, so he asked me if I'd been working back where she is still living, because there has been a security car parked there all night every night for the last week. When I confronted her about it, she told me she has been turning off the cameras when Dylan comes over, but flat out denying anything is going on. She's never lied like this to me before. We've been together 7 years and had a beautiful life together with our 5-year-old son. I've known Dylan just over a year now, and he's completely ghosted me after my ex-fiancée had a disagreement on Christmas. Then he's back the day I leave. I'd say this has been going on for a while if it is happening. But she swears it's just as friends facepalm #. She hasn't been herself since she seen her dying grandma nearly 4 weeks ago. Her cycle is messed up, getting her period every 2 weeks, but I just don't know what to believe anymore. We had such a beautiful life together and loved each other more than I thought was possible.